would like to take this opportunity to walk you all through the process that we undertook to fill one of the most important positions in the city of Albuquerque, the permanent chief for this city. I joined the committee as senior advisor for public safety. I also like to thank all of the members who put time and commitment into this. I'd like to introduce to you and present to others Mr. Herb Crosby, who was our recruitment coordinator, Bob Martinez, Fraternal Order of Police, and Ms. Carol Piers, Director of Family and Community Service. These folks dedicated their time and expertise to this process to make sure it was methodical and it was thoughtful. The search committee posted the position widely on national forums. The position opened on May the 1st and was held open longer than originally anticipated after receiving community input to ensure that we had a broad application pool. The position was nationally advertised and we received 28 applications from individuals throughout the country. We also provided a variety of opportunities for the public to engage in the process and provide input. For the first time in the city's history, 7 in-person sessions were held to get feedback from the community. We also opened up a feedback form online through the city's website and disputed it in the community centers throughout distribution throughout the community centers. The overall theme for the community feedback was that they wanted an honest chief who had to restore trust back in APD. After receiving the applications, the search committee conducted interviews of the finalists. We narrowed the pool talent down to 4 and submitted our recommendations to Mayor Keller, Chief Administrative Officer Sarita Nair. The mayor and the CAO then interviewed these candidates, with some flying in from out of state for their interviews. We wanted the process to be thorough and to be responsive to the community input along the way. We accomplished both of these goals from this search. Now, I would like to welcome the Honorable Mayor Tim Keller to discuss the committee's top choice and appointee of Michael GEIER.
Well, I want to thank the committee and also James Lewis for his leadership and their time and effort into this process. We wanted to marry essentially a notion of having community input with also a rigorous and methodical process, and this team was able to do that, and so I really appreciate that. The way they were able to do it was by basically to put in a whole lot of time and so we really appreciate that. Now, as mayor, keeping public safety as the #1 important priority in Albuquerque has been first on my mind since I took office. And Albuquerque has learned over the years that addressing public safety requires real leadership on the 11th floor and at APD. That's why it's so important to me that we conducted a methodical, thoughtful search for the police chief that James Lewis described. Now, we had some great applicants, and we shared some of those earlier. We interviewed several applicants from out of state who had exceptional backgrounds. And I want to share with you that Mike GEIER emerged as the top pick to continue tackling crime, implementing DOJ reforms, and to try and change the culture at APD and establish community policing throughout the city. Mike has a diverse experience in law enforcement, with 20 years back in the Chicago area, 20 years here in New Mexico, both with APD and as police chief of Rio Rancho. He has an outside perspective and also an understanding of our city and its department. It is that combination that is so unique and so critical for the leader of our department during these tough times that is so appealing about Chief GEIER. Since I appointed him as interim chief, he has effectively led efforts to strategically fight crime and oversee some of the most significant organizational reform in APD history. Together with City Council and with APD, we have started. We have started to productively work with the DOJ for the first time in years. We have started to implement community policing by building relationships with business leaders and neighborhood leaders. We have also started to tackle auto theft head on, and we're starting to see early, very early results. We've also decided to address gun violence by focusing on getting violent offenders and illegal guns off our streets. Also, we've decided to attack crime from all sides, and that's why in the budget that City Council put together, we include funding for increased programs in addiction, behavioral health, and homelessness. Finally, we are seriously addressing two backlogs in our crime lab. The first one is, of course, the 4,000 untested rape kits. The second one is the 16-month lag for fingerprints, which have a lot to do with our issues with respect to property crime. Now, I said back in December when I appointed Chief GEIER as our interim chief that we were going to do a search. We were going to take a look around nationally. We were going to see what kind of talent was out there. But I also said we might end up right back where we started when it comes to finding the best fit for Albuquerque. But it's important to me that our city went through this search because we found a strong pool of talent out there. And we also gathered important community input in the process. And we're also to agree on a chief to guide our city starting today through what's going to be a tough summer. And what's through regulations and reforms that we have to start today. And we cannot wait any longer for a permanent chief in our department. So for the first time in our city's history, we did reach out to the community. As James mentioned, those 7 public listening sessions throughout the city and posting feedback on our internet site, which actually got about 200 pieces of independent feedback on. Now, also the search process showed us that there are strong candidates out there who might be able to help us build our leadership bench strength at APD. And so we actually are continuing this search. We are continuing to talk to a lot of the folks on that list and other talented professionals to see who might be a good fit to join our leadership team at APD. The chief will now be up for confirmation by City Council, hopefully this Monday, and we're continuing, as I mentioned, to consider other candidates for leadership spots and build our bench strength throughout the department. And so with that, I want to welcome our choice for Chief of Police in Albuquerque, Chief Mike GEIER.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm honored and humbled to have this opportunity to lead the Albuquerque Police Department. I appreciate Mayor Keller's faith in me, and I look forward to earning the support of the City Council and the people of Albuquerque. I'm taking this responsibility with my eyes wide open. During my 6 months as interim chief, I took the challenge to start the transformation process in our department to make it into a more responsive, effective, and accountable APD. This transformation is much more than just reorganizing our leadership and making tough decisions about personnel. The mayor has been clear about my role. There was an APD that was an old APD and an old way of doing things that led to mistrust from the community. Now there is a new APD and a new way of doing things. We are more transparent and more accountable. We're going to be more aggressive in fighting crime, but we also will acknowledge our mistakes and be flexible enough to change directions if a strategy isn't working. Mayor Keller kept his campaign promise to invest in police officers and give them the tools we need to be effective. The City Council has also stepped up with resources and a vote of confidence in the direction that we are headed. When I was appointed as interim chief, I said I wouldn't make any excuses. We worked with existing resources, which required long hours and extra work from every officer in the department, in each area command and every division. We are seeing some initial success in many areas. Even Judge Brack, who's presiding over the court-appointed consent decree, pointed out during this week's hearing that we are starting to have an impact on crime. For example, during the first 5 months of this year, compared to the same period last year in 2017, auto burglary is now down 31%. Auto theft is down 14%. Robbery is down 39%. Commercial burglary is down 12%. And residential burglary is down 11%. And one of the keys to this is that traffic stops, which means the officers are engaging and being out there in the community, are up 51%. And that's one of the reasons that we can attribute to why stats are going, these criminal stats are going down. We know homicides are way too high. We're not hiding from that reality, but we continue to address the crimes that most often are nexuses and lead to that type of violence. As I mentioned that the mayor and city council are investing in APD and public safety, and I want the people of Albuquerque to know that those investments are already paying off. We just started a new cadet class this week with 42 new recruits still in the process, one of the largest classes that we've seen in a long time. We also have an unprecedented amount of interest from qualified officers who want to transfer and lateral to APD. These new officers and new recruits for the first time are going to be exposed to a more intense focus on community policing. One of the reasons I decided to apply for the permanent position was to move forward with the community policing program and the plan that we now started. I'm excited about this plan, and I look forward to the community partnerships that will help restore that trust and legitimacy for APD. Thank you.
Okay, we'd like our city councilors to share a few brief words, and then we're here to all take questions for whatever you'd like. And I normally, you know, we obviously try and respect public officials and whatnot. I know our council president couldn't be here. He asked a special request if his assistant might be able to share a few words. So we'd like to break protocol, and Lane, come on up and help out Ken. Councilor Sanchez. And then we'll hear from Councilor Davis and Councilor Borrego.
Mayor, thank you for the opportunity to speak on behalf of Councilor Sanchez. I'd like to read a brief statement from City Council President Ken Sanchez. Councilor Sanchez would have preferred to be here himself to support Chief Designee GEIER, but he's out of town right now. I'd like to express my strong support for the appointment of Acting Chief Mike GEIER to the position of Permanent Chief of the Albuquerque Police Department. I have known the Chief for many years, and I know that he represents the very best in policing. He's a dedicated public servant with over 40 years of experience, including 20 years with APD. He understands and supports the front line of officers who serve our community so well each day, and he also understands what's required to comply with the reforms required by the federal court. Mike is accessible and forthright, two qualities that will help him as he begins to implement true community policing in our great city. Mike's appointment next goes before the council for confirmation, and as council president, I have already approved putting the appointment on Monday night's agenda for immediate action. On Monday, I'll be supporting Chief Designee GEIER, and it's my sincere hope that he'll be confirmed at that time. Thank you again, Mayor. Congratulations, Chief.
15 years ago, I was a bicycle officer on this very beat right across the street, and a new lieutenant at UNM Police when Mike took over as the commander for Southeast Area Command. And in our very first meeting, he gave me his personal cell phone way back then and said, let's start working together between UNM and APD. We met here at this substation to talk about how that would work. And all these years later, when Mayor Keller was asking around about who we should have and what we thought about Mike as our interim police chief, I said, I think I have his cell phone number, but I'm sure it doesn't work all these years later. It turns out it still does. He's never changed his number. He's always been accessible. And as we've heard today, the plans and the implement, changing APD starts from the top. It starts by leadership. It starts by change. I'm proud to support him. I'm proud to be here with the mayor. It matters an awful lot. A year ago, we passed legislation asking APD to prioritize reopening this substation and bringing back bicycle patrols to Central Avenue from downtown all the way here to Nob Hill as a way to show the community that we were serious about community policing. And laying that foundation with the old administration a year ago, it's exciting to see new folks taking on this challenge so quickly and with the results that we've been long since waiting on. So I'm proud to welcome Chief GEIER. I'll join Ken Sanchez and other councilors, I suspect, on Monday in supporting his confirmation and making this permanent and welcoming to be our next permanent police chief here in Albuquerque. Thanks, Chief.
Good afternoon, everyone. It is very wonderful to be at this location, and I'll tell you why. About 30 years ago, I worked to help locate this little building back here that used to be a little drive-in. It used to be a little restaurant, and we located it at this site and opened the substation. So it's very humbling for me to be here again today. I shouldn't have said 30 years ago, because then that gives you some indication. But I will tell you that as a counselor and as a business owner in the Nob Hill District, I'm really delighted to support Chief GEIER's confirmation. Chief GEIER, and I've only known him shortly for probably about 6 months now, but every time I've asked him for anything, he's very thoughtful. He seems to be very strategic, and then he acts. And you know, that kind of a response is what we need in APD. We know that that needle needs to move, and actually at one of the city council meetings, I kind of slightly challenged the chief to move that needle, and I was happy to hear those statistics today. I'm looking forward to the statistics moving even further down with our crime. I think you know, if we work together as community residents and as business owners, we can make the city what we envision, which is a beautiful Albuquerque. Thank you today for being here, and thank you, Chief GEIER, for your work, and also to the mayor for the leadership.
Okay, I'll close things up for questioning just by adding this. You know, in this process, and even when I first got elected, even when I was running for office, there were always this idea that there was some magical person who could be all things to all people and be a new police chief in Albuquerque. And when I say that, I mean, you know, people say, like, well, they have to have done all the DOJ reforms, and they have to be respected by frontline officers, and they also have to be from outside Albuquerque, but they also have to know Albuquerque. And the amazing thing about it is the closest person to that is Chief GEIER. There was no one who actually combined all of those elements, that respect from the community, that respect from the front line, and now after 6 months on the job, some real credibility with the DOJ. And so let's all give our Chief of Police, Mike GEIER, a round of applause. Okay.